Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful day in pre-K and kindergarten. Thank you for taking time to join me to talk about the power of playful learning for pre-K and kindergarten. I would like to kind of start off with, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure we're all good. So if you wouldn't mind, in the chat, kind of share with me, are you a pre-K teacher, a kindergarten teacher, an administrator, a paraprofessional, a coach? What is your role in your current placement? And then are you a playful classroom? And notice I say playful classroom. It looks like we have some pre-K and kindergarten teachers. So a nice combination today. This is going to be a great conversation. And a social worker, thank you for joining us. Paraprofessional, wonderful. Oh, you definitely didn't have to take time out of your day, did you? And you did. It's going to be a wonderful hour and a half together, everyone. So as you continue to add in your role, and if you are a playful classroom, my other question to you is, do you, as a either pre-K teacher or a kindergarten teacher, do you collaborate with one another within the area that you are? If you happen to be located in a school district and in the building that houses kindergarten, do you take that time and collaborate together? If you happen to be a community base, do you collaborate with the kindergarten teachers? Oh, Connie, I wish you did too. We're going to have to get that going. Because the reason I'm asking that question is because we cannot do this alone, right? We need each other to lean on. And as we talk today, pre-K, you have so much knowledge to offer to our kindergarten teachers when it comes to playful learning environments. You've been doing it for years. Kindergarten teachers, you have a lot to offer our pre-K in terms of the curriculum demands that are coming down, and how can we combine and integrate the two. So thank you so much for joining. Today, I hope that you will leave with an understanding of the importance of a playful classroom. You'll be going and exploring through these 6 pillars of learning, which I hope is a new concept that you haven't heard about before. You'll be sharing some ideas with me and each other about exploring that role as a teacher in a playful classroom, as well as how can we get our classrooms to be more playful. In the chat, will you share with us, why do you think play should be part of your classroom? We say this all the time. We know that play is essential. You would not be here if you did not agree that it is essential. But why is it so important that it should be part of every classroom? It is a way that they learn, right? We know children learn best through play. And there's so much more to it than just play. That's kind of a loose term. Yes, that engagement and motivation. They need to learn how to use their imagination. You know, Charlotte, you said about that they learn best while using their imagination. We know that we are up against barriers with students coming to us without knowing how to use their imagination, because they don't get that on a video game, right? And so we need to teach them and give them that opportunity to use that imagination. It is useful for those social, emotional, it's critical. We all know that we cannot get academics in the long-term memory without them knowing how to regulate themselves and control their emotions. Yeah, it is all about helping them with those lifelong learner skills that they need to be successful, and not just in school, but in life, right? Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. So before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to kind of look back at the history of playful learning in pre-K and kindergarten. Playful learning has been a part of early childhood education for over 150 years. Yeah, you heard that right, everybody. 150 years. Pre-K, you really have never known a time without playful learning, right, in your environment. But kindergarten, you've been on a roller coaster. And we're so excited that we are now able to put it back into our classrooms. You may or may not know that playful learning was part of kindergarten before No Child Left Behind in 2001. But during that No Child Left Behind era, there was that reading and math push. So our kindergarten teachers, actually all levels, even you as pre-K, you felt that academic push. You felt like you needed to do more, right? And so what happened during that time? Poof, went the play. We got rid of things that we knew as educators was the foundation for academic learning. And so when we left that era and came into the era of Every Student Succeeds Act, play is coming back into the classroom, although it's been a slow process. Even though we don't have that official statement of what it looks like in kindergarten in particular yet, and I say yet, we do know that it will be law that kindergarten across our state is going to be developmentally appropriate with play-based instruction. So I do encourage you to continue this conversation even after today. So pre-K, we realized that every student needs to succeed, and they do that best when they play and they are taught at their level, right? And that's when your expansion model came into play. That's when you were able to provide that comprehensive services to students, including social. Yes. In 2017, the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee was established. And the purpose of that committee was to review kindergarten transitions from pre-K to kindergarten. And that panel identified effective practices and recommendations across the kindergarten transition. The KTAC report focuses on 3 key areas. First, aligned teaching and learning, such as advocating for and implementing play-based practices in kindergarten, like block building, imaginative play, and exploratory play-based teaching as a mechanism for developing academic and social emotional skills. There was research indicating that overemphasis in academics early on may bring short-term academic gains, but poorer long-term academic outcomes and behavioral challenges. We've seen this in our classrooms. As they get to that 3rd grade, IAR, right? We see that all of a sudden those scores are dropping, but yet we know in pre-K and kindergarten, they were leaving us right where they needed to be because we worked so hard to get them there. So now we know that those gains are not going to happen if we are missing that social and emotional and self-regulation skills that develop during playful learning time. The second area that was aligned was the assessment and data. I know we don't like to talk about assessment and data, but we need to. It's the way that we are able to see trends across our grade levels. If you haven't come together in your district as a pre-K and K to look at your pre-K assessment, such as teaching strategies goals, and your kids, your kindergarten individual development survey data, we encourage you to do so. That information is there for a reason. And I know we hear a lot of times, like, why do we do this assessment in kindergarten? What is the purpose? The purpose is to have conversations about what might be missing in our pre-K and kindergarten programs to get them to where they need to be. The third area is to strengthen those cross-sector partnerships with families and community. We as educators cannot do this alone. We need the help of our families and community. This also means we need to provide opportunities for our communities and families to really come together and learn what they need to know. I'm here to tell you from experience with my own family and grandchildren that parents do not know what skills they need when they are coming to pre-K and even kindergarten. Today's society is all technology driven. And unfortunately, not everybody is going to turn to technology and Google what skills do my child need to know when they are coming to pre-K and kindergarten. So we need to help educate them. And so we need to pull them together and find out what needs they have as well. But they can also give us that insight into their own children so that we can provide the environment in order for them to thrive and succeed. So as you mentioned in the chat, there are so many skills, right, that develop through play. And so to be a successful teacher of teaching children in early childhood, we must understand how they learn and what they can do, depending upon their age. Age-appropriate lessons and activities in early childhood can make all the difference in a child's early education and beyond. The American Academy of Pediatrics states play allows children to use their creativity while developing their imagination, dexterity, and physical, cognitive, and emotional strength. We as educators know that play is important, right? We know that pre-K teachers, even though you may think of it as being forced to provide that because of the monitoring and ECHRs, but you also know that it is vital and important, right? Kindergarten teachers, I'm assuming you're here today because you believe in the power of play as a learning tool and want to learn more on how to bridge those curriculum demands and what is developmentally appropriate. ISB also believes in play. They do have this article posted on their website. It's been there for over 10 years now. And so as you can see in the article, Importance of Play, it states that playful learning helps children develop social relationships and connectivity, which are important to a child's persistence in school, love of learning, and self-efficacy. Play is essential to learning for all kindergartners, really all children, even high schoolers. So there are exciting times ahead for our state. Beginning with the 27-28 school year, kindergarten classrooms should be developmentally appropriate with play-based instruction. That is the policy coming into effect when they put the full-day kindergarten mandate out. Kindergarten teachers, but I don't want you to wait until 27-28. Start now. Start by implementing some play-based instruction because it is a mind shift from where we've been. We together need to integrate play into our current curriculum, but we need the help of our pre-K teachers. So we're going to be looking to you, pre-K, for some guidance and understanding as this transition in our state happens. Pre-K and K are the foundation of a school district. We have long foreseen that we knew we were important, but truly we are essential. And so in order to build that strong foundation between pre-K and K, we need to collaborate more. We need to be given that time to do so. And we need to seek to bridge the transition. True collaboration goes beyond an end of the year classroom visit to kindergarten or even a kindergarten fun night, right? It involves alignment of learning objectives and a system to ensure that objectives are being met. This needs to happen in a systematic way and not just meeting in the hallway and having a casual conversation. Our hope is that in participating in this webinar, you will be encouraged to develop a collaborative partnership with your early childhood colleagues. We hope that districts will set aside that time in PLC for you to come together. We need more professional development geared to our early childhood setting. So for today's purposes, I think it's important for us all to get on the same page when we're referencing the term playful learning. And so a playful classroom is a place where content is taught and then applied using meaningful hands-on activities that nurture the essential skills for lifelong learning, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and confidence. We will be using this language and giving examples of how play builds on these skills throughout this webinar. The National Association for the Education of Young Children, also known as NAEYC, has recently revised its book on developmentally appropriate practice. If you don't have the new book, I encourage you to get it. It's not a joyful read, there's no pictures, but it is full of heavy content. And it does break it down into what pre-K looks like, what kindergarten looks like, what primary grades look like, and what all grades look like when it comes to developmentally appropriate practice. Okay, so it's important that we all understand this effectiveness of play. And the one thing that they talk about in this new revised version is 6 pillars of learning. And so one of those is the active minds-on. It means that learning should be active, hands-on, and we should design activities so children see the meaning behind the concept being taught. Introducing concepts, then reinforcing it through play. The other pillar is socially interactive. Children have the opportunity to play independently in groups or with the teacher, in small groups, or just being kids, and understanding the norms of working together, self-regulating, and feeling competent. The third pillar is engaged. I have the opportunity to actually be a part of many classrooms in my current role. And when I'm walking into classrooms, I listen for a certain hum in the room. I want to hear engagement before I actually see it. Children are busy in a good way. They deserve the opportunity to engage for an uninterrupted amount of time. Children engage in many different ways, and the longer they have to play uninterrupted, the deeper they can interact with the new content. The fourth pillar is that meaningful. Are the children interested in the content being delivered? Most of the time, probably not, right? Do they understand why they are learning what they are learning? I'm sure some of us can think back. Why did I have to learn that X times Y equals Z? What was the purpose of that? Right? The fifth pillar is scientific thinking. So creating a hypothesis, doing the research, drawing conclusions, articulating the findings are all part of play. They do this naturally through play, but can also be experienced through well-designed projects, studies, or investigations. Yes, you heard. We need those themes coming back to life. And the last pillar, and probably most important, is joyful. Nothing without joy. Learning should be fun. The more fun, the longer the engagement. Not only is it fun, but builds self-regulation, which is the leading indicator of academic success. These 6 pillars should be at the forefront of planning your daily schedule. It's important to note that explicit instruction is important. However, to reinforce the skills or objectives, it's important to make them playful. So we're going to dive into these pillars individually. And so the first one we want to talk about is the active thinking in the classroom. Children naturally want to explore and learn about the world. And by supporting this active minds-on mindset, we promote learning. The environment plays a big role in activating this pillar. Think back, as much as you probably don't want to those first few weeks of school. Your students came into the classroom with a sense of curiosity and wondering. You were probably like, no, don't touch that yet. No, don't touch that yet, right? But they were so curious at what everything did. So they wanted to explore. Imagine if you set up and organized your environment, but waited for your students to help with all the little details. We as educators spend days and hours working on setting up our environment, don't we? Not just, and I'm not talking just moving furniture. I'm talking about the labeling. What is on our walls? All of that takes time. But what if we waited? What if our students walked into a blank slate and they helped design? Could you imagine? First off, y'all probably looking at me like, I can't see most of your faces, but you're looking at me, I'm pretty sure. Like, what are you talking about, Sandra? You have lost your mind, right? But think about it. What better sense of belonging will they have if they get to help you create that environment? I'm pretty sure that most of our materials would be handled more with care, right? So one of the things that I really wanted to kind of talk about, yes, that physical environment is important. So when we walk into rooms, do we want to see individual place settings, such as desks? Yes, we still have those in classrooms. Or do we want to see more of that grouping to where they're able to talk to one another and collaborate? In a playful learning environment, we do want to see that there are collaborative spaces. We want to see those interest areas that spark the active thinking. So think about how your room is arranged and that first impression that students get when they walk in. Is it one of excitement and curiosity? Or is it one of, oh my, fear, because they know they're going to have to do some work when they don't realize that play is their work? So here's just a couple of examples of setting up some of those interest areas. I was able to kind of capture the different spaces in this particular room from different angles. So does your environment spark students' curiosity and therefore naturally activate their thinking? I do want you to think about that question and answer in the chat if you wouldn't mind. Like, is your environment set up the way you want it? Or would you like some more examples of how it could be arranged? Share with me. I know it's a scary thing, right? It is a work in progress, Lori. Thank you. It is. It takes time to develop that environment. And I'm going to be honest with you, you should not have everything out at once, right? Materials should be pulled in as the year progresses. And I love that you're saying, yes, more ideas will be helpful. Because every month, honestly, every day is a different day in your classroom. And what worked one day may not work the other, right? So we need to be thinking about how can we change it? What in my environment needs to be adapted to create this active minds on, because this isn't currently working, right? I'm so excited. I'm hoping that this will be like the part one of part two webinars that we can do, where we could really dive into some more of those environment changes and specifically into those guided play areas. Yes, those interest areas. So do you allow time for your students to kind of explore activities or even materials before you begin instruction or even giving guidance? We know from research that it is important for students to be able to engage and manipulate and use their imagination and explore with those materials prior to us telling them what that is supposed to be meant for. I love that you open up slow and change out toys. That is key for keeping their interest, right? And keeping that active minds on. Love it. Okay. Each pillar that we talk about actually has this continuum where you can reflect on your own playful learning environment in these pillar areas. And this first one is the active. Are activities designed so children see the meaning behind the concept? So look at this and say, where does some of this fall for me? Am I in that low area? Or is it more on the high end? Okay. How can we make our classroom more of this active, high-end thinking? Because once students are active thinkers, we want them to be engaged. And so that is pillar 2. Pillar 2 is all about intentionality and resisting that distraction that we give. We've already determined the importance of play, but sustained play is essential. When you are really engaged in a good book or a craft project, how do you feel when you're interrupted? It's not a good feeling, is it? When your kids come up and they're like, I'm hungry, when are you going to feed me? And you're like, no, I'm busy, I'm in this, right? Well, that is exactly what a child feels like when their play is interrupted by a fire alarm or another teacher asking questions, or even the fact that we had to stop what we're doing because we had to move on in our day. Our time frame is up. I was given bathroom. Yes. When they have to use the bathroom, it's interrupted, right? So we know that we need to begin to limit those interruptions and those distractions. We need to look for ways that we can plan for, hear me now, an hour of high quality play. Some of you pre-K teachers are like, we have to do an hour already. It's mandated. Well, some of you may not. You might be in a community, early childhood center, and that might not be yours. Kindergarten teachers, I know you're laughing at me going 60 minutes of play. Are you kidding? Where are we going to fit that in on our day between language and literacy and math and social studies and science and social emotional? Oh, and our specials and our recess and our lunch. Right? Where are we going to fit all of that? I'm telling you, we're going to do it. We will. If pre-K can, so can we. They do it in their half-hour day, and we can do it in a full day. So let's think about those ways. We just saw some examples of both pre-K and K classrooms, and that environment is more than just the furniture and materials. The environment is often thought of as the third teacher. In pre-K language, because we generally have a teacher and a para in the classroom, for K, we can call it the other teacher. Children thrive in environments that are suited to their interests and developmental stages. The environment is viewed as a place that is welcoming, authentic, aesthetically pleasing, culturally representative of community, embraces nature, and filled with purposeful materials. A key component of engaged learning environment are clear expectations. Our youngsters, our earliest learners, thrive on expectations and routines, right? So teaching how to use the environment assures proper use of the materials within it. So let's think about times when children have misused the environment. I know that it probably happened today in your classroom. Do they fight over toys? Are some of our materials being thrown across the room? I know I've seen chairs even thrown across the room, right? And for no reason. Do they sit and do nothing? Or how about my favorite? They just won't clean up. They just walk away from it, right? This happens when we don't take the time to teach them how to use and respect our environment. Don't be afraid to shut things down and reintroduce them. Developing clear rules and protocols for using the environment are essential. So just because you told them how to use the room does not mean you taught them how to use the room. In pre-K and K, they do not always understand our adult language. Sometimes I think it's another language to them. Involving the children in establishing those rules and protocols gives the children ownership of the rules. Let's look at some of those examples. So the number one tool in your environment to prevent challenging behaviors and assuring engaged learning is the visual schedule. So here's some examples of a visual schedule. I will tell you that putting time frames in here in kindergarten, right? They don't know how to read a clock. I love the pre-K. You've got the picture, you've got the words, they will learn it, right? So don't feel obligated to put those time frames in. But definitely think about how you can use a visual schedule to help. A lot of children will respect and learn the routine faster with visual schedules. And taking the time to go through it and say, we just finished our guided play. What's next on our list? And they'll be able to tell you. I know pre-K has a little bit easier job of handling their schedule. Pre-K teachers just say, you know, most of our kindergarten classrooms don't get to create their schedule. It's given to them by administration. And so our hope is that as the new policy comes into effect, that administrators will rethink kindergarten schedules and think about when learning happens for our 5- and 6-year-olds. And that putting specials first thing in the morning, such as music, art, PE, isn't always the best. Or giving them the 10:50 lunch. It's actually, research shows, giving them a later lunch. So we do hope that administration as well as yourselves will be able to kind of rethink your schedule and be able to adapt them as needed. As you get into playful learning, you will notice that students, sometimes there is a best time of the day when behaviors are not happening. And for you to have the autonomy to shift your schedule around is key. Here is an example of children making signage for their own room. Does it look neat? No, but it's their ownership of it, right? Look at the example on the left, okay? Keep hands nice, and then they're demonstrating it for you. We can say, keep your hands to yourself, or, you know, keep hands nice, but until they see what that looks like, we need to give them that example as well. Here is an example of a block center, providing that reminder of those expectations in that center, ideas to build, and examples of children's work. I really encourage you to, as the playful learning develops in your room, take pictures of your students following those expectations and hang them in that area. Talk about why you hung it there. Give them that praise. They will begin to respect the materials more. Making that environment about the children and not the teacher store. We spend a lot of money on teacher bought items, right? Let's utilize our students and think about the writing that's taking place when they help us create. They're able to work on that fine motor. I'm not saying ditch the teacher store. We need to support them. There are things that we need from them, right? But I'm saying give it a chance. See what happens when you give these students a little bit more control in your room, right? Yeah, Connie, thank you for that. They do love that. They love when you take pictures of them and you're able, they see it around the room. They're like, they really light up a little bit more, don't they? Okay. Now I know one of the biggest complaints about play is that children sometimes, you know, get a little whiny, like, teacher, Bobby is bothering me, or Susie won't let me play with that. If this is what you're experiencing during your engaged learning time, it is not the fault of the children. Ooh, ouch, right? Sorry. Since self-regulation is a goal, we need to take time to teach that. Teach them how to solve their own problems. The solution kit is a great way. If you have not put one into your classroom, I encourage you to try that. Add a solution kit. It's a series of visuals with solutions for solving problems, taking turns and sharing, waiting, setting a timer. You know, if you are interested in that, all you have to do is actually Google solution kits and they will pop up for you, right? I have seen solution kits used in many different ways, and the key to its success is to teach how to share, how to wait, how to set the timer. You can't assume all children know how to wait and take turns. Social stories, puppets, role playing are all ways to teach the skill. The social kits is available for free on, are you ready? NCPMI website. And I can actually will make sure you get that link. Or like I said, you could just Google. So let's think about if there is a collaboration between pre-K and K, is there a solution or something you have utilized in your classroom, a strategy that has really worked from pre-K and even kindergarten? Share in the chat a strategy that has worked to helping students stay engaged and find that self-regulation skill. Share an idea, share a strategy. When we come together as these two entities, which we don't get to do often, I really love hearing those ideas that are happening. I know they're happening. So in the chat, share one of those ideas. What is something that has worked for you in your classroom, a strategy to help students self-regulate? I always think, boy, if pre-K has a strategy that is working really well, it's, you know, tried and true, kindergarten could benefit from that. Because how wonderful would it be for a student to walk into a kindergarten classroom and see something familiar and like, oh, I know what that is, because so much of the kindergarten environment is unfamiliar to them. Look at these examples, everyone in here. Oh, you have a wheel. They must spin that wheel. Yoga. Those sand timers. Those are expensive, but those are great. Right? Breathing techniques. I love seeing those mindful breathing mazes in some calming corners, right? But we need to teach them some of that. Yeah, brain breaks are great, but we can't always necessarily stop the whole class to self-regulate one student. We need to teach that self-regulation skill, right? Yeah, calming corner. I encourage you, if you don't have a calming corner, create one. Breathing with a pinwheel. You know, I saw this in a classroom. She actually put a flower on it as well and sprayed it with essential oil. So as they breathe, the pinwheel is spinning, and then they breathe in with the flower, and they're getting that essential oil. Yeah. Smell the flower, blow out the candle. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, those calming cues. Love it. Thank you all. There is a link in here as well for you for the November 10th. Be sure to check that Empowering Self-Regulation in the Classrooms event put on right here by ECPL. Okay, if you haven't signed up for that, grab that link and register today. Banana breathing based on the book Grumpy Monkey. Oh, I love that. Yes, read that Grumpy Monkey and then do the banana breathing. Wonderful ideas. Thank you for sharing, everybody. So that pillar 2 is engaged learning. And we want our students to be actively engaged in their learning so that we as teachers can work with small groups or even students individually so that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our activities are highly engaging to keep students on task and limit those distractions, interruptions. So here is that continuum. Remember, creating that engaged learning environment, going for that high, you need to set those expectations. You need to model, show how to use, share what you're doing and thinking about, and then gradually introduce with guided practice. We want playful learning environments that are powerful. And in order to do that, we need to set and model and do it slowly. Yes, I know we're eager to get those centers out or those materials out, but taking the time is going to help with this engaged learning. Okay. So just be smart when you are introducing materials. Can you share with me and all of us in the chat, share some of your successes and challenges when creating a playful learning environment? We all know that there are challenges, but we also know there's successes. So what are some of those that you have had? And I know one of the challenges for kindergarten is that we have a lot of curriculum. Space. Some of our classrooms are, yes, we don't have a lot of space. Lack of materials. And believe me, we spend a lot of money buying our own materials, right? We need materials, yes. But it's amazing. Do you remember growing up and using your hairbrush as a microphone? Do they always have to have the fun and fancy materials? No, we want them to learn that imagination, right? Yeah. Space is space. And it's not just like the physical space of setting up the room, right? It's even that storage. Where am I going to keep all of these materials? I don't know who, decided to build some of these buildings and create kindergarten and pre-K classrooms without really thinking about the amount of space and materials that we have and need in order to do our job successfully, right? Great, thank you for sharing those. Sometimes it's just nice to get out those barriers, those challenges, just so somebody else can see them, right, and hear them. I do agree, yeah, finding the time to change out everything. Time is a factor. We have personal lives, and I know that you all spend hours after school, before school, your planned time, everything is really utilized to the best of your abilities, right? So sometimes it's more, and this is why I really like to see administrators on these webinars. I am currently doing an admin developmentally appropriate practice professional development going around the state just for admin. And one of the things that I stress is giving your teachers time during PLCs, during institute days. Not everything that they present on those institute days is geared towards us, but we could find more things to do just within our classroom and collaborating with each other, right? Thank you for sharing. Okay. To wrap up these two particular pillars, this active thinking and engaged learning, when children are given that time to explore before instructions, they are able to better assess their own competence. Simply giving children the time to take the lead and explore the content may promote their interest in learning and therefore naturally keep them actually engaged. It's important to give yourself the gift of time to just sit back and observe. You're like, what? You want me to do what during this time? Yes, take some time to observe. Listen to what your children are saying to each other. Look at the interactions that are happening. This could be just 15 minutes or maybe even 3, but you can learn a lot in just those 3 minutes. We can observe students' understanding of key concepts, but it's also important to observe that learning environment. Is this area working? Is this playful learning area conducive? Do I need to make it bigger because everyone seems to be wanting to go here? Do I need to change out the materials because they're not using them anymore? Right? Or maybe there's some negotiation that needs to happen between the materials. So therefore, I might need to think about getting more. Right? All things that we need to think about. And the only way that we can really look to see if we need these is by stopping, taking the time to just look, listen, and observe. The third pillar is all about social interactions. We know how important it is for them to socialize, but in a powerful, playful way. Children do not care how much you know or what you are teaching, right? They really don't, until you show them that you care by creating that environment that they feel safe and secure to take challenges. So if you want them to learn and achieve in your classroom, you first have to get to know them. You need to know their style of learning. You need to know their background so that you are adapting your lessons or your skills to their background and their culture. Once you've established this meaningful relationship with children and families in your room, that learning is just going to begin. It's amazing what happens. Children's verbal communication skills improve drastically in preschool and kindergarten. As their vocabulary increases, so does their ability to identify their own emotions and the emotions of others. Young children begin to consider the perspective of others and listen to what their peers have to say. So in doing so, they move towards an understanding that others might not have the same ideas as they do, right? But the play materials are engaging enough for them to learn. We as early childhood educators know how important it is to build those relationships. We say it year after year, I need the first couple of weeks to build relationships. Research has shown that once students have the foundational skills in social emotional development, what happens, everybody? That academic knowledge naturally comes. So those social relationships and interactions are crucial for social, emotional, and cognitive learning processes. That extensive research has demonstrated that warm and supportive interactions and relationships significantly contribute to successful learning in early childhood. Okay? I don't need to continue and preach to you all on social interactions. We know how important it is. Okay? So building those relationships, I just kind of wanted to share with you a couple of ideas. So you'll notice that the picture on the left is building those peer-to-peer and student-teacher relationships. And during this activity, students were working together, they were talking, they were laughing, just really communicating. The teacher joined in, as you can see, and what happened to the students? They got so excited. They were like, oh my goodness, my teacher is playing right along with me. The picture on the right, the two that you see, building relationships with family. This classroom participated in Zero the Hero activities. So every 10th day of school, a family member would come in and do an activity based on that number. So the 10th day of school, the 20th day, leading up to the 100th day of school. And on the 100th day of school, all of our Zero the Heroes returned. And as you can see, I did give them wonderful shirts. They all had their shirt that said Zero the Hero, what number they were. But all of our Zero Heroes came back. And then we did 100-day activities together. Not only was I excited because they were doing an activity which took a little pressure off myself as an educator, right? Gave me a little talking break. But the students were so excited because they never knew which parent was going to be Zero the Hero. So they had a mask when they came in, and they had to wait until that parent started talking or got closer to them to figure out whose parent it was. It was really exciting. I left their costume in the office, and they would change before they came, but they brought with them that activity. So if you haven't done something like this, I encourage you to do so. But maybe you've done something similar, and I would love for you to share in the chat with us other ideas of how we can build this relationship with our families. How else can we build that relationship? This was just one way, because our families are important. Another idea is thinking about the different cultures that we have, inviting those parents to come in and share about their culture, maybe bringing a food item, pictures, artifacts, their flag, their nation's flag, and really kind of sharing with students. What better way to build that relationship and to give the students that sense of belonging in your classroom? Another pillar is the joy, that positive effect. Children, we know how important joyful learning is. When they're not joyful about it, they're not learning. Same with us, even as adults. If we're not into it, we are not going to learn anything. So the children in this particular classroom, they wondered how long of a chain they could make out of the cubes in the manipulative center. And so they started linking all these cubes together, and they quickly ran out. All of a sudden, the cubes, they were like, we don't have any more room on this table. So they problem solved themselves and started grabbing chairs, right? And the chairs worked until they didn't. And all of a sudden, the chain started breaking. And we know as adults why it started breaking, right? But you should have seen the students. And as they started to try and problem solve, like, oh no, what else do we need under this chain so that it stays up and doesn't break? The collaboration and the joy on their face when each time they figured out a way to keep that chain getting longer and longer was so exciting. They also didn't realize that at the end, like, they started counting the cubes all by themselves because they wanted to know how many they had. It was so cute to see. Did some of them get to a point where they could no longer count because they were still learning how to count? Absolutely. But that's when the other children that knew how to count chimed in. And so those students were learning from their peers as well. Okay. It was really funny to watch their thought process. And this took at least, I'm not kidding, 45 minutes. And there was not a single whining or crying or throwing of anything. And there was very, very little teacher engagement. Okay. 45 minutes of just putting a chain together. But they found joy in it. So this pillar, joyful, that high level, for those of you that have that are kind of curriculum heavy on the worksheets, it's important for you to ask this question. Can I meet the objective of this lesson using hands-on materials that would activate the student's mind while keeping them engaged in a joyful manner? If the answer is yes, ditch that worksheet. I just want to start that chant. Ditch that worksheet. Ditch that worksheet. I was just in a building yesterday, and the amount of workbooks that are just piling up because every curriculum comes with workbooks. And each lesson has like 5 to 6 worksheets that they do. And it's like, oh, I could take that and turn that into a hands-on activity. And that's what we want to see, everybody. When creating a playful learning environment, it is the only way to make it powerful is by turning those lessons into a hands-on. Ditch it. Make them meaningful, which is the other pillar. Building on your students' knowledge and experience will create meaningful learning when they see that connection. So in building relationships, you learn pretty quickly your students' likes and dislikes, their strengths and challenges, who is social and who is a loner, who are the leaders, who are those mamas and dadas in the room, right? And who are those followers? And each of these children have differing interests based on many factors like, of course, the right brain or left brain, family interests, their cultural interests. Finding an interest based on all of these factors to interest all students is a challenge. What interests one child may be boring to another. And sometimes an interest will emerge due to a community or a school event. Sometimes it emerges because grandpa brought in tadpoles from the pond. And sometimes they emerge out of just the blue, carrying on a conversation, right? So here is an example. This was a classroom that the teacher asked the student, what is a caboose? She laughed out loud because she used the word every day. Classroom helpers, she has a caboose. But when she asked the students, what is a caboose? It was amazing what they said, okay? And then it began. As you see here, it says, what do you know about a caboose? It says a caboose is at the back of a train. They stay at the back. Cabooses are painted red. They have blue windows. So it was interesting that, they are interested in what a caboose is. They don't necessarily know what they are. So let's dive into it. So the teacher had them draw a picture of a caboose. You may be asking, what is that picture on the left? It's a picture of a person, right? It's a granddad, as the student said. Because what did this student think a caboose was? The fanny. So she drew a picture of Grandpa's fanny. Again, it's amazing when you pose that question and just let them, ponder on it for a minute and draw a picture. It's amazing what you'll see. Some of their understanding is real, some of it is not, right? But again, that caboose meant different things. And so through this experience, through this investigation, they all learned about positional words, one-to-one correspondence, adding and subtracting. They looked at maps, they looked at routes, all of that possible content. I'm going to tell you right now, I have 6 children, but my second to youngest, he drives a ready-mix truck. He's going to shoot me for telling you the story. But when the Amazon outage happened here a couple of weeks ago, and it affected everything, one of the things it affected was his iPad in the truck. They're not allowed to have cell phones. They get their directions from dispatch on an iPad. And when that Amazon outage happened, the iPad was not receiving GPS directions. And of course, what did he have to turn to? An actual map, one that he has never seen before in his life. Because as he put it to his elder colleagues that were making fun of him, he says, you're making fun of me for never growing up in the era that showed maps, that my whole world has been GPS navigation. I could turn around and make fun of you for not knowing how to use GPS and only relying on maps. It's just generational. But I will say, I love the fact that during this caboose lesson, that old map came out, because those are essential skills that we cannot forget about. Yes, technology is great, but there will come a time where we need to go old school, right? And I say old school loosely. All right, in your classroom, could you just share with me, what centers do you have in your room? This might also spark some of our other teachers to kind of incorporate one of your centers. So share with us those names, those titles that you have. What are those centers that you have? And I'm going to look through this real quick as you're shooting them in that chat for me. What centers do you have in your classroom? Writing, art, library, sensory, yes, dramatic play, science, painting, and outside of writing and art, you've got a painting center. Okay. Oh, I love it. The dramatic play is a pizzeria right now. Ooh. Blocks, yes. Essentials, right? A steam table. Yeah, wonderful. I love that you've even got a literacy or a math station, right? One of those centers, because again, the joy that we see is that they turn those literacy and math games that they play, and they're pulling them out during guided play all on their own, on that free play. They're like, no, I want to play with that literacy game. We as educators get excited about that, right? So how do you make those meaningful connections, though, in those particular centers? So let's take sensory, for example. How can you make that meaningful connection with them in the sensory? Something to think about, because every area should have that sense. So no matter where they're at in the room, yeah, just by asking them questions, absolutely, Emily, right? While they're there, asking them. And they probably don't get to make slime at home, right? I love it. Just by commenting on what they do. That's right. It's easy to do. Some of our centers are easier than others to bring this meaningful connection, right? Like dramatic play. That's an easy one to kind of build that connection with. But as you can see, like thinking about the sensory, how do we make that more meaningful with objects that they are familiar with? I see tweezers in classrooms, right, for fine motor. Students they don't know what those are, right? We're the first time, and then they go home and they're like seeing somebody use tweezers to pluck some hairs, which, you know, we all eventually have to do. Then they know how to use them because we taught them, right? Yes, talking and playing, putting their favorite toys in a center. It's not always a bad thing that they bring things from home. Sometimes you can use that to your benefit, right? Love it. Okay. Yeah, now's the time, right? That studying trees. So kids made squirrel soup using leaves and acorns. Did they bring them from home too? Were they able to go out and help clean up the yard? That would be great. Yes, I love that you said my stress lowers because it's meaningful. Yes, it does. Those behaviors definitely take a little backseat when they're interested and you've made those connections. So this last one is that scientific thinking promotes learning. So extending children's understanding through inquiry-based learning. We have interchanged our language from play to inquiry. I know you've heard this. And back again, because play is inquiry-based learning. Did you know that inquiry came from play-based learning? Play-based learning came first, and it wasn't until that word play got a bad rap that all of a sudden we had to shift our talking to inquiry. I'm going to apologize for the bright light on my face because I forgot to turn the lights on. That it's now getting dark early. So it's pitch black in here. We could spend a whole 2 days probably exploring some inquiry-based learning. Your role is to be intentional, though, about that play and those inquiry sessions. Knowing what content you want to deliver helps you and the students kind of guide that play. So creating the environment and the activities to support that content to be learned. Children do not always have the right answer. I know that's shocking, everybody, right? So as teachers, we need to expand on their questioning. We need to ask questions back. We need that back and forth communication, right? Currently, our curriculums are geared towards building a knowledge base of facts and skills. Well, guess what? As long as the children respond based on curriculum set by facts, the child can be successful. Scientific thinking is the foundation of this inquiry-based learning. Developing a hypothesis, doing research, exploring, finding answers, maybe even more questions, then analyzing and drawing conclusions. Most importantly, articulating what has been learned. One of the most powerful things you can do in a playful classroom is to allow them time to share, giving them the opportunity to share with you and their peers what they did. We call it debrief. And guess what happens? During that debrief, your social emotional is being hit on because the students naturally start telling you about challenges that they had. And you can ask, how did they solve that challenge? And then they're sharing with you their strategy approach. So let them talk. Okay? It is fun to play with the children at the sensory table, right? They get so excited. Right? So let's go back to our chain builders real quick. This was a good example of child-directed inquiry-based learning. They had a hypothesis. How long of a chain can we build with the cubes in the manipulative center? They tried and failed many times, but they eventually solved the problem. Right? I don't know about you, but I do still have some questions that I would love to ask them, like, how long was it in inches and feet? Is it taller than you? Can we get it to stand up? And then, of course, the factual. How many cubes were used? Right? So many questions that I have. In this particular classroom, it was a body study. I do not have all of the components, but I do have some significant outcomes that would make a pre-K or K teacher happy. Look at this. In this slide, you see the dramatic play turned into a doctor's office. The pictures show children playing together, talking, writing, engaging with tools, right? Again, those are pictures of the students actually doing it, not some random ones or ones from last year, but them currently. And of course, there is a question posed in there. Are you sick? Go and visit the doctor. The students got so excited. So here is an example of that body study in the block area. As part of the book study, right, they did. We were wondering what shape our bodies are and how many blocks it would take to trace them. So the question was, how many blocks did you use to trace your body? Students had a chance to help each other to find the answer because you can't place blocks around your own body like all the way around. You needed a friend. So when they laid down, they had to cooperate, which means they had to stay still. And through this activity, the students met the following objectives. They were counting, they were demonstrating knowledge of self, they were participating cooperatively and constructively in group situations, not to mention how exciting it was that they were getting their picture taken, right, with the block. And this was the book. So during shared reading, the Bones book, talking about they created their own, having, you know, the whose nose is it, and then actually taking pictures of noses and placing them in the book, and then they'd guess which students' noses those were. But these are all outcomes of that playful learning by doing it through an inquiry base. Don't you love how Patrick made a person with circles and squares? And that's so cute. Okay. All right. So what has been your best inquiry-based project or investigation that you have done? Share with us. Maybe you're doing one right now that you are so excited about. And if you'd like to unmute and kind of share your story, please feel free to do that as well. I would love to hear what your best inquiry-based. Kindergarten teachers, this is when, boy, we can kind of take these inquiry projects and tie it into our curricular resources. We can do it. A class hamster project. I would love to know how that came about, Marissa. Were you getting a class pet? Buildings. I love it. Building, construction and building using different techniques and different materials, right? Because you can do building with many different materials in the room. Yeah, right now 'tis the season, trees and pumpkins, leaves and acorns, right? But that pumpkin investigation, can't be afraid to have a little mess in your room, right? You had a music investigation. Well, that's intriguing. Kimberly. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Keep sharing. Go ahead and keep sharing those ideas. Oh, I love that. The kids voted. Thank you for Marissa for that. The kids voted on what pet to get. And the hamster piqued their interest. So you did a nice project based on that hamster before you got the hamster, right? All right, and this last one, we currently, on the pumpkin investigation, we read a book about how many seeds in a pumpkin. And today we cut open 3 different sized pumpkins and took out all the seeds. And tomorrow you'll count them. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Great ideas. The time. Well, as we begin to kind of wrap up for the day, why is play so important? Why do we need to create these playful learning environments? It's because we are developing those skills. We are not just stretching their imagination, but teaching them how to use their imagination. We're helping them to become problem solvers. We are hoping that they will interact with each other. We know that for a few years, interactions were limited, and so we are combating against that. But we're also combating against that technology. So we need to see them sharing and interacting with each other and providing that opportunity through play, just because it's joyful, right? I discover my interests and talents. Students don't know what they like until they get to explore and play with it, right? So I do want to kind of end with this. It is important that you use a variety of learning formats and that you think about how you can turn that learning format into a playful learning environment. If you recall at the beginning of this, we said the power of playful learning. And that doesn't mean just during that free choice time. We're talking all throughout the day, through all of your transitions and daily routines. Large groups should be playful. Small group should be playful. Yes, of course, your guided play should be playful. Your daily routine, that arrival and departure, even the transition should be playful. Take the opportunity to embed developmentally appropriate practices throughout the entire day. And that is and will create that playful environment. I want to kind of end with you sharing with me in the chat, and I would love to hear from each and every one of you, please, that if we were to do, another one, like a part 2, what is another wondering that you have that you want us to focus on? You can also share a takeaway from today. Maybe you didn't know about the 6 pillars of learning before today, and that is your takeaway. I want to encourage you to think about those 6 pillars. And I know you'll get that as a resource. And think about it when you are doing every activity in your room and making sure that you're getting over to that high on the continuum. But definitely share with me your wondering and your takeaways and any other thoughts that you may have. And please feel free to unmute yourself and share. The 6 pillars is a good resource to have, right? When you're thinking about what to include and how am I going to make it playful. Oh, Andrea, your school's getting ready to introduce loose parts. I love it. Yes, and I will say loose parts is one of those that we didn't realize we were doing it, but we were doing it already when we brought in leaves and acorns and such. And so, yes, that is a big one. I will say, I believe we are doing a loose parts book study in April through the Kids Project. So be watching for that. But that's a good book and a good resource for you for loose parts, the gift of playful learning.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I heard that, in 27, 28, we'll have to implement play-based learning.
Yes.
And I teach in Chicago Public Schools. And I was
Yes.
just wondering, I don't have an early childhood degree. Are kindergarten teachers going to be expected to have that degree? Because I feel a lot of what you're talking about is more for early childhood teachers. That's my
Yes.
concern.
No, it's thank you for bringing that up. So one of the things that did happen, it's been maybe 10 years now, is that the state of Illinois did change the certificate for kindergarten to an early childhood. So if you were in the process of getting your degree, you had to make a decision. If kindergarten was the way you wanted to go, you needed to then take the early childhood route versus the elementary education route. And so those certificates were coming out. This year, I know that ISB has kind of decided that we're struggling getting teachers in early childhood, and that means pre-K and kindergarten. We are struggling. And so in order to kind of open that base up, not only can they have that early childhood, but now you can also get that endorsement to teach that kindergarten. So to answer your question, we were grandfathered in, those of us that had that kindergarten, because of the teacher shortage. But that was the way that the state was going, is that in order to be able to do developmentally appropriate practices correctly and to have that knowledge, you needed to have that background through teacher prep programs. So you had to have that early childhood. So right now we're kind of in this phase of it's difficult because we are so short on teachers. We want to get that excitement back so that people want to go into teaching, right? And so I'm hoping that this is going to help with that. When we think about those developmentally appropriate practices and including them now, because you don't have that degree, I want to encourage you to take up all the professional development that you can, and also reach out to your pre-K teachers, because they truly do have that foundation of what it should look like in classrooms. And we can have a further conversation about this off
Okay,
the
okay,
webinar.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we will need to adapt our curriculum to make it more play-based. One of my favorite things to do with districts currently is we are taking those curricular resources and we are looking at each lesson and saying, okay, this is the skill. I'm taking that skill and I'm going to do a mini lesson on it. And then I'm going to get into small groups where I can have them practice skills that they already know. And I can pull and teach them what they need to know on a more independent level. And then I want to see all of this in action during guided play, during that hour of choice time. Okay. We are hopeful that there will be more guidance for kindergarten teachers moving forward with this initiative, right? What does that really look like? What I can tell you is that it is being recommended that you think about your literacy and math workstations and making those playful, and that those are practiced skills, not new concepts, but reinforcing skills already that they know, and then taking that into your guided play and really having a 60-minute block for guided play, which is difficult in some of our kindergarten schedules. But when we think about that 60-minute block of collaborative play, it really includes the students turning and talking to each other about their play. where they're going to go, what they're going to play with. So they're planning for their own play. And then also taking time at the end to debrief and having them share out. Having them share how successful they were or what challenges they had, because that's where you're going to see the SEL come through. Right. So yeah, we do need to adapt those curriculums. Thank you so much. You'd love to learn more about the differences between centers and those playful centers. Yeah, really taking some time to talk about those workstations that are kind of, they have an academic goal, right? Versus your choice time, which is more open-ended for the students and more imaginative play. Yeah, 20 years ago, I was able to play-based learning so much more in your classroom. Yes, but that's what we're going back to with some guidelines. Because as you know, when I first started teaching as well, it was play-based. And what happened though, not only did we get that academic push, but we also we kind of got away from what play and guided play was supposed to look like. We started utilizing that time to pull students and assessing them one-on-one instead of interacting in the environment, right? So we have to take a pause and really think about what it's supposed to look like for our role as well as the student's role. And so I think that would be a great webinar to listen to and interact with. Well, I appreciate you all taking the time to stay with me tonight and really kind of share some ideas. You all know the power of play, but to think about it in a different lens through the 6 pillars of learning, I hope will help enhance your playful learning environment. So as we conclude, there are some resources here that you can see, take note of. These are some great books. Again, the Developmentally Appropriate Practice book is definitely a long read, but very valuable because it breaks it down into what developmentally appropriate practice looks like at the different levels. Purposeful Play is a great entry book if you are just beginning to introduce play. Choice Time goes into what do those core centers really look like. And of course, the possibility of play is just a lot of actual activity examples for you. Making and Tinkering with STEM is a questioning book. So it gives you those ideas of how to include STEM, but also some of the questions to go along with it. And Serious Fun, I'd love to throw that one on administrators' desks. Feel free to buy it for them. Just place it out there. There's a lot of research into that particular book about the background of play-based learning and developmentally appropriate practice. Be sure to check out ECPL's future webinars. Don't forget that one on November 10th. That will be very meaningful. And I look forward to seeing you again for part 2.